All right, I'm Bonnie Waring and I'm a senior lecturer at Imperial College London. An ecologist is someone who studies how the environment functions. So we study the animals that live in the environment, the plants, even the soil and the invisible microorganisms that live inside it. And we study how they all work together to provide humans with things they need, like shelter, like food, or even things like regulating the effects of storms on our houses. I'm what's called an ecosystem ecologist. So I look at how material moves between the living parts of the environment, like plants and animals, and the non-living parts. Every living thing on the planet is made of carbon, and that's why it's one of the most important elements for life. But carbon is also important because it is very closely connected to climate change, which is one of the biggest problems that our society faces. So climate change is caused by an imbalance in what we call the carbon cycle, the movement of carbon between the atmosphere, the plants, and the soils. On land, there's three major places that carbon can be. So it can be in the atmosphere. And primarily carbon in the atmosphere is in the form of two chemicals, carbon dioxide and methane. And these chemicals are actually very important because they trap the sun's heat. Without some of these gases in the atmosphere, which we also call greenhouse gases, our planet would be too cold for people to live on. Another place that carbon can be is in the bodies of living things, mostly plants. If we weighed up all of the organisms on our planet, plants weigh more than all of the animals put together. So carbon moves out of the atmosphere and into the plants in a process known as photosynthesis. That's when they take carbon dioxide and they make it into leaves, woods, and roots. When the plants die, their dead parts become part of the soil. And that's the last major place where carbon can accumulate in a land ecosystem. There's lots and lots of carbon in the soil, even more than all of the plants and the atmosphere put together. And so the carbon arrives there when dead plants fall to the ground and they're eaten by decomposers. These are microorganisms, bacteria and fungi. They're too small for us to see, but all of the time they're eating dead organic matter. And some of the carbon in those plants that they're eating stays in the soil. That's what makes it so carbon rich. But some of it comes back to the atmosphere in a process that we call respiration or breathing. So every time you or I exhale, we're releasing a little bit of carbon dioxide from our body. And the same thing is true for plants, and the same thing is true for animals, and the same thing is true for these decomposer microbes. So the breathing of plants and of the microorganisms that live in soil, the respiration, brings carbon dioxide back into the atmosphere. And so that's the carbon cycle. It moves out of the atmosphere and into the plants through photosynthesis, from the plants into the soil through litter fall, and then in the process of microbial eating or decomposition, some of that carbon dioxide is returned to the atmosphere through their respiration. So this is how the carbon cycle has worked on our planet for millions and millions of years. But about 200 years ago, humans discovered a way to take very old, ancient carbon out of the Earth's crust in the form of coal, oil, and natural gas. And so when we burn that carbon in our factories, we are also adding carbon dioxide back to the atmosphere. And because of that, the atmosphere contains more carbon dioxide than it ever has in human history. And remember I said that it's a good thing that we have these heat-trapping gases in the atmosphere so our planet's warm enough to live. But too much of a good thing is what's causing global warming and all of the side effects of that, like rising sea levels and stronger storms.